we can already go here, and I would also like to invite the other guests to come down here. Do you want to take a seat? Yeah, all good. All right. Setzt euch gerne hier rüber. Perfekt. Servus. All right, welcome everyone who just joined for the next panel. We will talk about venture into quantum startups. Thank you very much. Alexandra, you already basically started this panel with your talk right now. You were talking about how quantum is obviously one of the technologies that fall under the big umbrella of DeepTech, which is usually characterized by long development cycles, high capital requirements. In the case of quantum computing, on top of that, the return of investment is sort of unclear still, as we just heard from the question. There are many confusing messages and narratives that generate inflated expectations. This is exactly why what we want to talk about today. So thank you again for joining us today. I would also like to introduce on stage Tobias Faupel here in the middle, Managing Director of the newly established DeepTech and Climate Fund. Tobias, you had various experiences in startups at BASF, Hightech Gründerfonds, so you basically gained experience from the beginning till the very end in a company, in all phases of a company's life. Thank you very much for joining today. Next up is Jan Sperlich, over there, Chief Commercial Officer at XeedQ. Jan, you joined XeedQ a year ago, a bit more now, I think. Yes. To spearhead the company's commercialization efforts by introducing, and now let me read this correctly, the first multi-qubit mobile quantum processor. It's a hard one to pronounce. Welcome for joining us today. And last but not least, right next to me is Förtsch, founder and CEO of Q.Ant. We already saw you on stage today, so thank you again for joining us. You studied mathematics and physics, right, and you earned your doctorate at the Max Planck Institute for the Physics of Light, followed by a position at Schlumpf, and now you are CEO of Q.Ant. Thank you everyone for joining, and I think we can go ahead with our first question of today. If I think about it, you were also just talking about what VC funds are actually investing into quantum now. If I think about it, and spontaneously, I know maybe 2-3 funds that specifically invest into quantum, but in general, there are not that many. Tobias, maybe I start with you on this one. What would you say how the current investor landscape looks like for quantum startups?
Well, I think, of course, there's a spillover of the current situation for any startup that's no longer as in 2021 and 2022. So there's, let's say, leveling back to normality. But on the other hand, I think, especially for the first phases, for the pre-seed and seed investments, there's not only Kai Ventures or Kai Ventures. Yeah, there's Quantonation, or there is some DeepTech VCs that do invest in quantum startups. Among others, companies like V2 or Apex, who have actually hired physicists. And then I would say, it's up to the ecosystem to develop and to see what rounds are coming next and how do we get the bigger rounds funded.
So you were already mentioning, right, the VC market right now has declined since its high in 2021. Do you see the same trend in the funding of quantum computing startups?
Definitely yes. Peer investors are looking more carefully, but I wouldn't say that they totally shy away from it. So we've still seen rounds. I know of term sheets that are out there. So definitely, I don't want to say that this is this is now bad times to raise money. I think it's one of the focus areas, and DeepTech generally as a new buzzword is getting a lot of attention, and some companies, some serial entrepreneurs, some VC funds are adding expertise on top of their formerly software focused funds in order to also capture value in those sectors.
Alexandra, how do you convince your LPs to invest in such a technology that comes with high uncertainty?
Mm-hmm. we don't have really to convince them. It's LPs that come out of the industry first, that know about the risk, that are working closely in quantum-related technologies, that are also knowing that they take a time risk, or maybe that they have to wait a bit for their return. And as we are based in Basel, I was just talking about it before, we have also LPs from the area, family offices from the area, that just see that something big is growing. Like I said, we are Kai Ventures, we are small but within a bigger ecosystem. So we have first the LPs that want to develop the region with us, and then we have LPs from the industry. But yeah, I mean, it's a very risky investment, so we don't convince them. They are more, they are like, they want to take risk and they like the technology to come.
Mm-hmm. Are your LPs mostly Swiss then, or are they?
No, they are European.
European, okay. So would you say you see a difference in the mindset in Germany compared to Switzerland?
In the mindset of investing?
Towards your LPs, yeah.
In the mindset of the LPs, maybe in Europe, in the rest of Europe, they are still more risk-taking than in Switzerland. In Switzerland, we have a lot of LPs or investors in general that only do very early, smaller investments, and we also see with this a lot of startups that go out of Switzerland. Like they have a very good education in Switzerland, in the universities, and then very early, after they found it, after they had their first investment rounds, they leave the country. That's a problem.
That's quite interesting because, I mean, usually you associate the German LPs, right, with not being very cautious and not taking risks. So quite interesting to see that it's quite similar on the other side. We were just talking about getting money from VC funds. Jan, next question would be for you. You at XeedQ were awarded with 30 million euros from the German Aeronautics and Space Research Center, DLR. So you have not received traditional VC funding so far. Can you give us a reason why you chose, or did you actively choose to be bootstrapped and not pursue traditional VC funding?
The funding that we received so far in this quantum computing initiative secures our R&D. Basically a main chunk of that, which is for us obviously crucial, and it gives us kind of more room to maneuver on the market and to basically test the waters and to talk to VCs. So we are talking because we need more investment to bolster our next phase of the development. I mean, saying that we are already kind of feeling secure for the R&D means we are already looking more to how do we get these machines, what we are producing right now, into the hands of customers. So, and for that, we are talking very easily. We have to get additional labor force and skilled ones, right? Not just for R&D, but also for building these machines. You're talking about marketing and salespeople and building structures of the company. So for that one, we would need funding, clearly, and we talk to investors right now, and but maybe we have more time to get it right.
So the DLR fund basically gives you the possibility to be more cautious and to actually think of who you want to get into the company with you.
I think this is very crucial, yeah. I mean, I know it's a luxurious situation, and if you talk to VCs, I mean, or investors, not just VCs, if you talk to investors, I mean, we experience 3 phases, right? First is genuine interest on the topic itself, and to our unique approach to deliver and build a quantum computer based on NV centers in Diamond, which is mobile, which is robust, which inspires a lot what you can do with that. And second, we get immediately asked the next questions, which are probably the same you're asking is not a quantum or not a deep tech company. I mean, like all the startups get asked on the market. Like, who are your customers? How many computers you are going to build in the next year? Who is on your board? How do you ramp up that and this? And how you reach your milestones and your KPIs? So this is just all startups experience. And getting these both things together, what we are doing, and these questions, we are entering the third phase of discussion. And this is what I heard also from you and you're on stage, is kind of how you get this together. And yet then you're talking about what's the difference between deep tech startups and a startup, for instance, I mean, getting the next e-scooter on the market or building an application for the App Store or the next same-day delivery startup, right? Which every year come another 10 on the market. So, and we say there is more risk. There is definitely more uncertainty. Basically, the uncertainty thing is maybe something built into quantum as well. And the third one, what I experience is the level how you talk to the people, and that's why I say we take more time, because we want to have a partner which talks to us on eye level, which is aware that the people you're talking to in this quantum computing startup scene right now are scientists who developed something, who achieved something. They didn't come from just with a wild idea. They have something already developed. They maybe have 100 papers or more. They had their PhD, they spent in the university, and they made the step out of this university and lab environment to start a company. So they are serious guys, and they want to work with partners. They want to have an eye-level approach. They want to be accompanied on the journey. They know what they know, they don't know what they don't know. So what you lined out, what you can bring to the party. So this is what we're looking for, and this is where we take time. And I think it's wise to take time.
Clearly. Would you say you are actively looking in the European VC market, or is that also something where you're looking abroad, where you'd say there's more supply of VC money in the US, for example?
We don't restrict ourselves, first of all. And second, yes, we see the difference on both sides of the Atlantic, which is how you handle risk, how you are curious to discover, and also to how you handle risk. And probably this is very deeply rooted in the history of America and probably Europe. So that's how I receive it. So that's why I was surprised that Switzerland is even worse than Germany. So yeah, Germany is not, we are not risk takers, right? So obviously not, no.
Yeah. Tobias, the DeepTech and Climate Fund exists almost specifically for that reason, right? To be more risky and to be more adventurous into new technologies. Would you say you're taking a different approach?
Well, I was listening carefully and seeing the fund duration. I think that sets us apart. We have a 25-year fund duration being set up, and we are brought to the market as a matching fund for the private money you mentioned. We also have that private money in Germany, you know, sitting right here actually. And corporate VCs, corporate family offices, I mean, I think there's both markets. And yes, our LPs, which is KfW and Sondervermögen, special fund, they both, those who are managing that, said there is a market and market developing, so we have to make the market bigger by bringing us on the table. So yes, it's a clear focus sector, quantum computing, quantum sensing, quantum as a whole for us, and we're looking into it with the team we are setting up now, but we're just one piece. Yeah, we're just one adding block for, I think, a diverse, I mean, as the ecosystem of you guys is growing, also the financing ecosystem has to grow.
Thank you very much. Michael, Quant is a spin-off of Trumpf, so you might actually be more free from the shackles of constantly needing to search for VC money like many other startups have to do. So my question is, does that influence your daily business in a way? Does the situation come with different strings attached?
I mean, why did we do that? Because in 2018, quantum sensing and quantum computing was obviously not at the stage in Europe where you would have received the funding at the dimensions where you need to start a hardware-based startup. So it was basically unknown, and this was the reason why we started as a spin-off from Trumpf. If you think we have an easy life, that's wrong. Because honestly, neither where the money comes from, but it's always the same game. Someone gives you money, you build a technology, and then there is an earn out. And this is the simple mechanism, which we also have to deal on a day-to-day basis. We have established quite stringent metrics that we go to stages as you have them in the VC scene as well. You're not just getting a big pot of money and then do whatever, run. It's exactly the other way around, and we need to commit ourselves to milestones on an annual basis. Demonstrate now, so the focus on customer has become much more severe than it has been on the first year. So we need to prove that really someone is buying into our technology. Otherwise, we are not getting the next round financed. And the simplicity here is that we don't need to deal with so many investor relationships, right? I mean, we have one big investor, which we understand, and he understands us. That's a big pro. So we can talk tech and business. It's a big benefit sometimes. But for the future, it's not granted that we are not having additional investors, because you also have to have different flavors guiding you to the future, and this is what I then call more on a strategic level, which guide you, for instance, to specific markets that share specific market insights, which a single investor just truly cannot have.
All right, you were just talking about metrics, which actually leads me to my next question. Alexandra, how does Quai Venture identify promising startups? What metrics do you apply there?
Okay, so first of all, we search for startups that fit into our ecosystem, startups we can give an added value, because for us this accelerator is also a risk mitigation. So whenever we invest into a startup, we help the startup to grow. In our investment thesis, we focus on kind of the whole value chain of quantum, so we are very diversified. We are open also we are open to invest into quantum sensing and quantum computing, not in pure hardware. This game is kind of over, so we are already in the second investment wave. For quantum, we focus very much in the quantum computing space on software and algorithm development, and this also because our ecosystem is made like this. So now we see that the industry shows, not a need would be maybe too much to say, but shows an interest in using quantum algorithms, doing the first use cases, the first POCs in industries that are close to us, like the life science or the chemical industry, also the finance industry. So we choose the startups also after this. Who could we connect to who in the whole value chain? And we see that the next investment wave will be led by this algorithm and software development.
Tobias, you mentioned that you're just setting up your team, so I assume the discussion about metrics is also one that you are having right now. Can you give us a little bit of insight on that, on how the DeepTech and Climate Fund is doing it?
I think a lot has been said already. On top, what we believe in as a team is that the team on the other side determines the value very much, and we also believe that, all being engineers, that you can apply metrics on a team as well. So we have external advisors, and we really we do interviews with everybody in the team, with external advisors together, and we have a certain element of our due diligence that is purely related to the team, and that's maybe something, coming from science, from very deep science, that to complement your team and to be open in accelerators for complementing people. I think you also found your co-founder, and you're making probably a great team. Having complement characters and complement backgrounds is super helpful, and then the drive towards at the end of the day development of a company that makes money. I mean, maybe that has to be said that frankly, we want that the startup we invest in makes money, and we basically get a return as investors. So it's not anthroposophical, or what is the word? Yeah, it's about making money. Yeah, altruistisch.
All right. Jan and Michael, you both got a grant from DLR, as I mentioned earlier. So how does DLR measure the success of your cooperation? Because like I talk to a lot of startups. Lots of startups are interested in working with DLR. So do you have any advice on that, on how to prepare? Or
We have not.
excuse me, Jan, it was. So excuse me, I'm sorry.
But I can comment on it.
Yeah, Jan, the question is for you. So
Something interesting.
The grant what you mentioned is not just paid once, and so it's basically based on milestones. So we have to deliver, but it's basically the milestones we set ourselves anyway. So that's why I'm pretty comfortable on that one. And as soon as we reach milestones, we get the next chunk, and this is agreed basically over a year ago.
So like working with something like DLR often comes a bit difficult for startups, I would say. We often hear that it's bureaucratic. It takes a lot of time. Was that similar in your work with DLR?
I'm not sure this is a DLR specific thing, actually. I think working with public service public service agencies, whoever, and especially, at the moment when they spend public money, is bound to certain rules and regulations we have in this country. Along goes a certain process, which I think perfectly, first of all, is fine and makes totally sense. But then we are going very closely to digitalization, how much paperwork is involved, and how complicated you make things. But I think this is like everywhere. So as a startup, obviously, you would wish to concentrate only on the product and to get it out as fast as you can. And but nobody is totally free here, right? So.
Even though you didn't receive a grant, you said you would like to add something to the topic.
Well, in Germany, I would say we don't don't have a problem with the startups. We have a problem with the scale-up phase, right? Once the ticket's getting big, we have an investment problem. And this is not now arguing, oh, we don't have a proper VC scene. It's a dual problem, right? If you have seen an American startup pitching their idea to sometimes a German, very technocratical startup, you clearly understand why the big tickets are often received in the US. So both sides have to change. But in order to bridge the scale-up phase, I think it's a very good idea that we also use to some extent governmental money if it's of a strategic interest to keep the technology in the country. But please let the IP stay with the companies. Thanks.
I think you hit a spot there. Alexandra, would you like to add something to that?
No, I totally agree. We see a lot of startups that come out. 60% of the startups come out of university, and the IP stays with the university, and this is a no-go.
So
just agree.
For everyone who's not, who doesn't know exactly how the IP game works here, could you elaborate a bit on that, where exactly the problem is?
Well, before I founded the Q.Ant, I was involved in startup actions, and what I learned is that there are 7 things you need to do. The first 4 to have a good startup is people. And it's exactly like that. And then you essentially have to have a good technology, a very scaling business case, and you need the IP. And once you have this convincingly complete on your pitch deck and you can provide this information, you get the fund and you receive it. As one of these is missing, you're getting very risky. You can comment better on this because you're investing. So far receiving the money, but then it's becoming a nightmare for you as investor, right?
I wouldn't be as hard and say the IP has to be out. There has to be a freedom to operate, and an exclusive license would be enough in our case, for example. I think we can agree that somebody like a research institute can also participate in returns that are at a later stage. So license agreements are often negotiated too long. That's for sure. They are even within the same legal entity. They are in different sites. They are different people do different things. But I think it's well addressed. And that might be one of the early help that you can give as an investor, that you say, look, we have invested in X companies, or we have analyzed X rules. This is the terms that we should take, and that's it. Yeah.
But what comes after? What comes after you?
This is exactly the point.
Well, you mean if new but
no,
For a new
the
investor.
point is once you step out, you as investors step out to continue and hand over to someone else. For how would this new fund or this new investor think about if the IP is missing?
it's not missing. It has to be.
Yeah,
it has to be. It has to be given in the seed round.
Somewhere
already.
else.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be given over in the seed round. And I'm just what I see is that the terms discussion takes forever. So the rounds. That's where I was pointing.
So, but we
of course
agree.
we agree that you need the IP. Period. Yeah. So I was just.
So, Michael, what would you say needs to change in Germany in order for that to happen?
It's as simple, and probably then the bureaucracy is a bit against this idea, but I think to bridge this scale-up phase, I would say that the government should invest into startups by becoming a customer, but not for the IP reason, but to understand the technology much better. So if companies like us are delivering to institutions quantum computers, they're starting to gain insights. This is a huge value for the whole ecosystem, because then the government itself can judge by itself whether this technology is working or not, and not just on a PowerPoint slide, right? But yeah, I think that's basically it.
All right.
But do you have an IP issue? I mean, Jan, or
We don't have an IP issue. Very clearly. And yeah, of course we had this discussion as well in detail, right? And in detail, what you just mentioned, and at length. And you have, I mean, it isn't, I mean, if the goal of the QCI is to create an ecosystem, and that's what they claim in the first sentence, or in the third, then it only makes sense when the IP stays with the company on the market, because otherwise you can't exploit it, and otherwise you can't build it, because the government itself is not an economic entity who builds an ecosystem as such to make profit out of that. So there is some room for discussion, but I think we don't have a problem. No, not for us.
in my understanding, the DLR is a customer of you, so it's at least my understanding so far for you. It's booked as revenues, or where is it booked?
I wouldn't call it, I mean,
What else would you call it?
Okay.
yeah, good question.
You get money
I
for
mean-
service, so I hopefully I don't.
But the point is, are you a contractor, so like an engineering office that hands over the device you develop, including the IP, or do you have a customer that gets a product and this IP stays with the company? This is something, I mean, I don't know how you regulated this, but when this thing started, this was a very heavy discussion, and I would say for most of the startups not really preferable to hand the IP, including system, to the DLR.
I'm not from DLR. There was somebody here.
No one is from the DLR, so it's
Maybe
hard.
somebody
Maybe
here.
you should focus on.
All right, certainly.
I just heard this discussion also 2 years ago, and I thought it's solved because I asked today some startups I was talking to, and they said, "No, is there an IP issue?" And the answer was no. So maybe you're bluffing, or it's
A good thing there will be lots of people from DLR here today that we can discuss this with later. I would also like to talk about the ecosystem a bit more, because we heard your pitch earlier. So you know the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, right? It takes an ecosystem to raise many startups, as the government has understood by now. What would you say Germany lacks in terms of ecosystem?
I mean, in Germany, you mean?
Or if you think this is a question that should be asked on a bigger scale, then we could also talk about Europe, of course.
I see stronger ecosystem elsewhere, and I have to think about where the reason is. So what I see in Switzerland, for example, what is strong in Germany is in Switzerland it clearly lacks public money. So I think it is a very strong position in Germany you should use this public money to build ecosystems. in Germany there is a lot of academic ecosystem, but not so many private ecosystems. So I think this is it's a very different approach. Being a private ecosystem is much more fast, can be much more focused. You can go much more with the technology if you don't use public money. Tobias, you look at me like it's not true.
I have to disagree, yeah, because I think there's been a great job being done in Germany to build, at least on the acceleration side, ecosystems as public-private partnerships, or even incubators like Merantix, being it on AI, or the Medical Valley in Tübingen. Yes, then you have roundabout RWTH Aachen, where we're very close, and my colleague comes from the RWTH Aachen. There's, I think it's Europe. They claim Europe's biggest DeepTech incubator being set up with partly private money. I think we're good in combining it. And we're good in living it specifically diverse. Of course, we don't have one center, Berlin to a certain point, but not for DeepTech alone, not Munich alone. I think, and I enjoy it, that we have Aachen, that we have Ulm, Hamburg.
Absolutely.
So let's value that.
Absolutely. The problem I see with public money is that you're obliged to invest in your country, right? So when I look at, for example, the different funds we know, I mean, there is 4 pure quantum funds. And like when I look at Quantonation, you mentioned it, or Infinity in the Netherlands, or now there is an Italian fund coming, pure quantum funds, but they are obliged to invest into local startups because they have public money, and this will never create a diverse ecosystem.
We have European, we are European notified. We have German money, but we can invest in Europe. So yes, there's a European focus for us. We're not international. And I think it makes a lot of sense if the LPs, in other cases, it's also Trumpf being an LP somewhere, you set the terms, so who has the money sets the terms. And I agree it shouldn't be too small and too restricted. But if we have Europe as the common ground, I think we can all agree that, that's where we should focus on.
Yeah, it's also a trend, right? It's a trend that the focus goes a bit more Eurocentric. Would you agree that we step back a bit from the global approach in quantum technology for security reasons? This is also what I just see in the last month happening.
And would you believe this is a good trend?
For the technology development, not. I don't want to do political statements.
That's okay. That's okay. But speaking about politics, we were talking about how much public money there is actually in quantum computing and into building this quantum computing startup ecosystem. As two startups over here, what would you say? Is the government on your side on this one? Finally, is this a technology that the government is doing, where the government is doing it right at this point, or is it or is that yet another technology that will pass over Germany?
No, if I may, I would say let's give applause to German politicians once they get a lot of bashing. Otherwise, what we in Germany really, to my impression, did very well. We started early, and we'd not started with micro investments from the governmental point of view, but we announced a 2 billion package for quantum technologies in general. And I think this was a really good trigger. When I was traveling the US in 2020, they were still very jealous on Germany because back at this time, they were not so comfortably backed up by their government on quantum technology. So I would say this was well done. The only thing what I can say is this was the first block of investment, but the problem is in 2026, the race is not over. We're developing DeepTech. So to emphasize this once more, the technology which we will have in hand in 2026 is nothing that can be compared with the technology which we enjoy on a day-to-day basis, for example, integrated in our smartphones and so on. So if we want to really keep this technology in Germany or in Europe, let's go Europe in that context, then we need to think about how to finance this technology after 2026. And at this moment, I know that a lot of discussions are going on, and I believe we are going to take up on this. I hope we're going to take up on this, and I wish that we're going to take up on this. Otherwise, we have to leave the country and search for money somewhere else.
Jan, what is your opinion on that?
I can just enforce what Michael just said. I mean, that's what we have here is kind of unique, and I think also unprecedented. This level of investment. So first of all, it shows it's understood, and there is the wish that Germany plays a major role. Or talking just about Germany here, and everything that we've seen today, and also what I've heard, I think it's people understand that this is not just a short-term hype, so it needs long-term investment, and it's the level of uncertainty is high, and probably also what the time frame means. And I'm pretty sure this is not just my feeling. I mean, we don't know what happened in 2026, but my feeling is it's clearly understood already, and people understand and already start talking what it means for us as a country. So I'm very positive here.
Tobias, you are in a, I would say, in a particular role here because the fund is obviously funded by the government, but you're basically operating like a private VC. What is your opinion on the way the German government right now is handling it?
No political statements, but I can agree that, of course, continuity in programs makes a lot of sense, you know, and I think there's smart people managing that. I trust them. I have to say that, you know, the more an industry develops, the more the private investments have to come, and that's our role, to bring private investors on the table, to be a matching facility for them, to de-risk and to de-risk on one hand with instruments like us, and to de-risk on the other side with the state being a customer. I think makes a lot of sense, and yes, there shouldn't be no strings attached that hinder the entrepreneurial decisions you need to make in order to develop your company best. That's my opinion. Yeah.
All right. Let me look at the time quickly. We are unfortunately almost at the end. This is, I think, the first panel that I ever did that ended on a good note in regards to towards the government. So, like, applause to that.
You awake still here?
So I think we can. It's pretty clear now that what is happening right now is very good. But we need to see what's happening after 2026. We need to keep the momentum and continue building what the foundation is being built for today. And in that regard, thank you very much for taking part in this panel today. Thank you to all four of you being here, but also, of course, thank you very much for everyone in the audience. 2 minutes left. If there's 1 minute, one question, sorry, then we can take it. There's someone in the middle over here, Nina.
Can we pick up? Can we pick up scale-up investments, please? Because I think that's the missing piece of the jigsaw at present. We've seen with the EIC accelerator program that at least the European Union is trying to put a large money into picking up scale-ups, but I'm not really seeing anything else apart from this initiative from the EU.
Tobias, maybe
you can go on our website. We are growth investors, so our sweet spot is 5 to 10 million, and we can invest up to 50 million per company. So we're exactly positioned in that early growth phase. I think what you said, you know, is the capital markets have to develop, you know. So we have to have not only Nasdaq North or Nasdaq US, but we have to develop the capital markets in order to be much earlier investing into companies who have higher risk and then probably also a higher return. So you invest in. So I think there's also other instruments and there's a diverse investors landscape developing as well on the growth phase.
And if I might add to that, the European Union just launched the European Tech Champions Initiative last year. You might have heard about that. Tobias, maybe you know, correct me, 3 billion.
I mean, but the goal is to have bigger VCs as well, because like the names I mentioned, they have maybe 300, 400 million, and then the allocation is a little lower. And the idea is to have those growth funds who can invest 50 to 100 billion funds And yes, I think it's 4 billion that are for LP tickets from the public side. And then, of course, it needs private institutional money also to complement, and it needs teams to manage those funds. That's also, but yes, I think.
So there's also traction in that regard. Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to hand back to my colleague Natalia, if you would like to come downstairs. I think, yes, we're already over time. Thank you again, you for taking part and for your insights today.